Welcome back. That's Brendan. I'm Parker, and this is Lobby Concessionals, the movie podcast where nobody's right and everybody's wrong. Take a look at those buttons on your screen there. Like, subscribe, follow, and check out our socials and our websites. Today we're joined by Sean. Thanks for coming, buddy.
Yeah, stoked to be here.
I think as far as our release date is concerned, this is your first episode. So sorry to...
Foreshadowing.
Yeah, it threw me off. Oh, boy. So yeah, thanks for being on the show. We have not figured out what we do for merch for our guests, so you aren't going to get anything for this appearance. Yeah.
I don't know. I might buy you like a milkshake or something later.
Nice.
Okay.
That's merch for sure.
We've set a standard, so that's good. Today we're going to do our first episode of Under the Influence with a guest. So we decided to bring on Sean so we can discuss his favorite director. Sean, I gave you zero warning that I was going to do this. So, but who would you say your favorite director is?
So I've been actually thinking about this since you did Guillermo del Toro. I was like, who would I do? And yeah, I think I landed on Chris Nolan. It was a bit of a tough debate in my head of like, okay, what all directors would bring me to a movie? And there's Guillermo del Toro, Quentin Tarantino I'll see because he directed it. And the other one that came to mind was the Coen Brothers.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
But then I figured I haven't seen a Coen Brothers movie in quite a while, actually.
Fair enough.
Even though I love them.
Yeah.
Isn't the last one like Inside Llewyn Davis? Llewyn Davis?
That's the last one I remember.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah,
think,
like they literally just might not have put out
because
any.
I think they've split up and they've done, one of them has done a solo movie.
Oh, yeah?
Wasn't there one with George Clooney? And it was like a Roman play or something?
Oh, Hail Caesar.
Hail
I think.
Caesar.
Caesar.
Oh, I thought that was before.
No, it wasn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, Chris Nolan was what came to mind because I've
Sure.
pretty much watched all his movies. And honestly, he was kind of the first director I started to recognize the name of as well. So yeah, I landed on him in the end for sure.
And I think that's exactly what we're looking for. You know, like our first couple episodes of Under the Influence, or the very first one in particular, we talked about Kevin Smith. And it's not because it's Brandon's favorite director currently, but it's because he was the one that really introduced him to, really grew your love for film. Yeah. So I think the first director you recognize the name of is, you know, exactly right in the pocket there. That's what we're looking for, you know, that grows your development with film. Well, that's perfect to hear, because as those are watching on YouTube can recognize, we like Christopher Nolan.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So 2 out of 3 posters we have are him, so that's good. And David O. Russell's holding up his side on the other end there, so keep it up, buddy.
Amsterdam looks great.
Yeah.
Oh, the new David O. Russell film. Yeah, it does. It does.
I'm into it.
Nice city, too. I think that's how he took it.
So, another question to put you on the spot here, just to kind of get a flavor of what you like with Nolan. What would you say is his best film in terms of, you know, filmmaking? And what would you say is your favorite of his films?
Ooh, out of the gate.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get a flavor, you know?
No, absolutely. It's great.
And we can actually, if it's better for you, we can ask this question around afterwards as well.
Yeah, it'd be like when you're flustered at a restaurant and you haven't looked at the menu and everybody else is ready to go.
Yeah.
You want to go around the table and you can ask.
Oh, no. We're not going first. Okay, I don't want to establish something. I'm just saying that if it makes you feel better, we'll all do it.
Tried to save you, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Okay, so I found this really tough to think about.
Sure.
Because they're also different and there's a variation of his vision in each one as well, I think.
Okay.
So looking at a movie like Inception, that is Chris Nolan from start to finish.
Yeah.
Whereas Batman, Dark Knight might be his masterpiece in most people's eyes. It's not quite his vision from start to finish like Inception would be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm struggling with it. I think I settled on Memento.
Ooh.
I think it's so simple compared to the rest of his movies.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of the most beautiful, just storytelling things he's done, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the story he tells so simply, but so perfectly with just going backwards and kind of meeting in the middle for the climax at the end. Sorry, going backwards and forwards and then meeting in the middle at the end. And just taking the viewer for a ride through all of that. Like, you aren't familiar with the story before, so it just puts you perfectly in Leonard's shoes. Sorry, the protagonist.
Yeah.
So it puts you in his shoes so well because you see his notes and it's like, don't believe his lies about Teddy.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I don't trust Teddy. And it just takes you so well through this story of being in his shoes, and then by the end being like, wow, he's a horrible dude. Like, I started out absolutely rooting for this guy, being like, oh, I hope he solves it. I hope this all figures out. And
it turns out you're the piece of shit.
yeah. And so I also think that movie was the first movie that ever blew my mind. Like, I feel like at the time, I'd mostly just seen your typical, I guess Hollywood movies a little harsh, but just kind of, it goes through the story. There's your happy ending, you're satisfied.
Yeah, totally.
And then my brother had said, oh, you got to see this movie. Like, it starts at the end and kind of works its way to the start. And I very naively went, what's the point? You know everything that happens. Like, why would I watch this? And then I ended up watching it, and it was just like, okay, wait, this is different. This is something else.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think it was the first movie that also opened my eyes to, I guess, what storytelling can be in movies in a lot of ways. So it holds a deep place in my heart. Maybe I'm biased in that way.
No, that's exactly what it should be.
Well, and I think it's the only movie I can really think of that actually uses filmmaking techniques to, first of all, put you in the shoes of the protagonist, but secondly, to like in such a successful way, because it is a massive part of the narrative. Like that story sucks if it's played traditionally, beginning to end, and there's not a lot of other movies I find that tuck away a twist and reveals in the film. Using filmmaking techniques like that,
You could argue Usual Suspects to really, really, like, you'd have to argue it.
Yeah,
I'd listen to that argument, but I think that's it feels like a natural evolution of that.
Well, and Memento is just so much more than non-linear. Like that's the thing is there's lots of non-linear films, but it's not.
Well, and I think like Usual Suspects is a good comparison because it's sort of an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's hard to say Leonard's not a reliable narrator because he's trying to be.
Totally.
But yeah, I think it's so different in The Usual Suspects. It's like, here's the twist.
Yeah.
And then you're like, whoa, now I need to think back. Whereas this one, every time a scene starts or ends, like he wakes up with the ball. I don't feel.
And I think
like,
I think you just nailed it too. I think the unique thing is that he's trying to be reliable narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really unique in terms of these kind of stories now that we've seen more of them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you trust him the whole way. Like he trusts his notes and you trust his notes. And you don't find out till the end that he's lying to himself to make himself happy and give himself purpose.
Remind me to come back to that because we're still talking about this thing. But that's my favorite Nolan thing, and I want to talk about it.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
So for context, though, just to be really clear, you think that's his best film?
Or is that your favorite film? That sounds like the
it could
nostalgia
be
blast.
the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
in a lot of ways, yeah. I'd say both.
Both.
It's pretty solid.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Pretty solid.
Do you want to go next, or?
Yeah. This was almost a no-brainer for me. Favorite movie, Prestige.
Okay. Yeah. Can't argue.
I just love the theme of it so much. The setting, all of it. And best is honestly, you could sit me down and you could make me waffle between Inception and Interstellar. Between the two of them, Interstellar probably not as tight as a movie in terms of the actual storytelling part of it. Mm-hmm. But as the evolution of him as a visual director, it's pretty hard to top.
Yeah,
Interstellar.
Absolutely.
So those two, but I think I lean towards Inception.
Fair enough.
Because again, something else I want to talk about later as well.
Okay. I would agree that Inception is my favorite film of his, for sure. Yeah. Again, given my backdrop. Yeah. But I think Dunkirk is his best film. Wow. And in particular with Dunkirk, I think that it's just because it's pure story. You don't know any of the characters' names, and it doesn't matter. They're just they're elements in the story. You're not following their individual stories in the same way. Oh, and they're not individuals. The point of it is to be a representation of soldiers and war as a whole, as opposed to let's follow Private First Class Ryan.
Harry Styles.
Yeah. So I think Dunkirk does amazing things in terms of how films are made and in terms of how stories are told. So I would argue that's
really solid. I can't fault that at all.
But so am I right to assume that we're all sort of on the same page that Nolan is a modern genius as far as directors are concerned? That he's like we'd all be plenty happy just to sort of gush about him for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to convince me he's not in the top 5 of modern directors.
Yeah. So I guess my argument is I don't know if I need to say, if I have anything to add to the discussion of here are all the good things about Nolan. So personally, I'm probably happy to just hop into some of the issues I have with him, or we can discuss that. Now, that being said, if you guys want to have an opportunity to gush about him, I wouldn't say a particular movie, but if you want to, now's the chance.
I'll go. I just want to make sure I'm saying it right, and I want to make sure that I'm in my head. I'm getting the point across. I think he has a lot of isms, like a lot of Nolan-isms. In terms of, like, you know on screen what it looks like and how he's doing it. You know what the kind of characters are. I think the most underrated thing that he does that I absolutely love is the stuff that Sean kind of touched on earlier with Leonard's narrative. So often when a director or a storyteller or a writer looks for a twist or a mystery, they hide things. They hang things on the wall, and hopefully you see them, and hopefully you don't. And I think the most Nolan thing that I love is that you only see what the characters see. When there's a twist. So in Memento, you are absolutely what's the word here? You're absolutely following Leonard along because you're invested, because you see what he sees.
Yeah, you're locked into his perspective.
You're locked into his perspective. And it's the same in Inception. It's the same in The Prestige. Nothing is a mystery box. And there's going to be a mystery, and maybe that's why they don't feel like mystery movies, is because you follow a character and you only see what they see.
Sure.
So what's brilliant about a Nolan film is you're sitting there and you're dissecting, you're trying to figure it out at the same time, but it's not like a weird unique twist movie where you're trying to figure it out from the beginning. Oh, it was the bad guy the whole time.
Yeah.
You watch it from a character perspective, and you're going through it, and he puts the thought process in you because you're following the character. And it's just a weird underrated thing that I don't think people do well, or people don't do.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's definitely easier to show the audience some of those reveals, or do a little bit of a little did he know sort of thing, and then we get a perspective from the villain's point of view or whatever. Or we see that the forces of evil are uniting to combat our protagonist. But yeah, you're right. We're constantly locked into their perspectives.
Yeah. So like I watched Interstellar last night
to
kind of prepare for this, and because again you're just watching it through Cooper's perspective, spoilers. Where we at with that?
Spoilers for a
7-year-old movie,
8-year-old movie,
8-year-old movie. Yeah, like Matt Damon's turn. Like you see it from Cooper's perspective only. And then the other stuff is happening as where the other characters are, and it doesn't register. And I think you pick it up pretty quick.
Sure,
but it is just as Cooper is realizing it as well.
Yeah,
and I think that happens a lot in Nolan films, and I like that a lot. Even Batman stuff, you figure it out when he figures it out, and he walks you through the process.
Yeah,
and I think I appreciate that because I hate mystery boxes now. I think twisty movies are cheap.
Yeah. Or it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think with that, it's cool how he really makes you think about the whole movie.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and all the little things along the way.
Because you feel like you lived it.
Yeah. And it's very much an experience versus, oh, there's the twist. Nice twist. I didn't see it coming. It's like it really makes you think.
Yeah. And because you're personally invested, that twist is either heartbreaking or it actually feels like a personal thing.
Sure.
It doesn't just feel like a twist. So yeah,
Well, and it's weird because we keep talking about twists, but I don't think he is a director that is necessarily associated with twists either.
and that's exactly
You
why.
know?
Yeah,
And well, but beyond that, even like it's not like all his movies have twists, which first of all makes a twist in a movie more rewarding if you didn't expect. Like, you go see a Shyamalan movie and you just expect, like, it's like, okay, when's it gonna come? You know?
No, you don't go see a show.
maybe don't.
But so at least with Nolan, like, there's always depth to it, but you don't expect necessarily that there's going to be something hidden, you know? That's actually kind of a good segue into one of what I was going to talk about. Is there a concern with Nolan's films that they're too intellectual? Because I think that's what he's been known as a smart director, and he makes big budget actioneers in a lot of cases, but they are intellectual. However, given the fact that, as far as I'm concerned, Tenet was, I wouldn't say quite abysmal, but not what I want in a Nolan film. Is it too much? I think Interstellar isolated a lot of people as well. There was a lot of people that said they didn't understand Inception, which I didn't ever personally have a problem with, and I thought was kind of strange. Like, I thought it was they held your hand through a lot of it. I didn't think it was too confusing. But Interstellar, I can absolutely understand someone losing track of that. Is it too much? It worries me about Oppenheimer, which is his upcoming film and it's supposed to come out in 2023. Is that going to be something where the average moviegoer isn't going to be able to enjoy?
I think it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess the box office numbers say no, he's not.
Sure.
Kind of too cerebral in the movies, but yeah, I think it's a weird mix, I find. Like, Inception, I thought was fairly straightforward, like they really explained it.
Yeah.
Memento is something I think I needed to rewatch the first time, and I was like, whoa, wait.
Yeah.
And things like that. But most things I think he explains quite well, but I'm worried about the direction he's going a little bit. Like, so I watched Tenet for the first time last night.
First time.
Yeah, and it kind of frustrated me when they're kind of setting up the whole thing, and the protagonist is like reverse shooting the bullets.
Yeah.
And I think one of the lines is just, don't try to understand it, just feel it. And I was like, oh, we're just copping right out here.
Yeah.
And then they kind of doubled down where he's shooting again. He's like, whoa, what's happening? And she's like, you're catching the bullet. And it just is like, okay, you just over-explained this without explaining, and it felt really weird.
You gotta read more quantum physics books, man. Jesus.
But yeah, I think like ultimately, I think it's refreshing. I think I like sitting down and being like, I'm gonna have to pay attention to this movie.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, if I go see Mission Impossible or something, I know what I'm there for. I'm gonna love it. It's gonna get huge box office numbers. But I'm not sitting there like, okay, I need to watch this. Like, I guess The Prestige starts, are you watching closely? And it's like, you feel, I don't know, I go in and I feel like I have to focus on this movie to understand this movie and really commit to it. And I love that about it. I think it makes it a really unique and special viewing experience.
Sure.
And I don't think there's enough, I guess, mainstream movies that do that a whole lot. Or mainstream directors. Like, Christopher Nolan seems very unique in that.
Totally.
Yeah, he makes really high budget movies that are going to be like this. And apparently the audiences love it. He still gets money to make them. The movies get made. Maybe Tenet was a hiccup, but...
Well, and so is that the concern that Tenet, if he jumps the shark with some of his tropes, some of his intellectualism, is that where we're going now? Like, I think Brandon and I had first discussed when you first saw the movie that Jonathan Nolan, who's, I think it's his brother. I can't actually remember. Yeah. Who is his frequent screenwriting partner, was not involved in Tenet. And so part of us, like, we were speculating maybe Jonathan's the one that reins Chris in. Chris is like, oh yeah, we should go back in time.
I think it's both, right? That's why I think Westworld sucks.
Okay. Different discussion. I'm not getting into that with you. But so I wonder if if we had more movies like Tenet, if this is the direction he goes, are you going to be disappointed?
I think so.
Yeah.
So to me, Tenet felt a lot more like he loved the concept he had. And it's a cool concept.
Sure.
But it felt almost like he was trying to just set up scenes to be like, oh, what could we do with forward and backwards and a temporal pincer?
Yeah.
It's like, let's just throw that in there 20 times. Yeah. And it felt so much more like almost a proof of concept to me, more than a really strong Nolan story.
Yeah.
Like the rest of them have me hooked through the story start to finish, and this one was kind of like, cool, we have to stop the bad guy, and there was payoff in the second half, kind of with how everything worked. But ultimately, I wasn't nearly as committed to it because it felt a lot more. Here's a sweet scene we thought that we could do forward and reverse. Here's another one, and it's like it was really cool. Yeah. But it felt to me a lot more like scenes than a really well-rounded movie.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. You and I have talked about the concept of this, and we brought it up. Thought about maybe using it as an episode, and never happened. And Nolan is a really good example of it. Is the idea of a director chasing the ghost of themselves?
Oh, sure.
Right. And if Nolan arguably peaks at Inception in terms of visually storytelling and all that stuff, and every movie now he feels like he has to go bigger and bigger and bigger because he's chasing the idea. He's chasing, but he's also trying to just top himself. And if he thinks the peak is Inception, then it's going to get more and more ridiculous because Inception by itself, a lot of hand-holding stuff, but the concept, the execution, the style, the look of it all.
Yeah.
So the jump, I mean, Dunkirk is probably the little blip in the radar there, but the jump from Inception to Interstellar to Tenet, it's just conceptually he keeps going bigger. Stylistically, he keeps going bigger. Visually, he keeps going bigger, and it just feels like he's just trying to outdo himself to mixed results.
Well, and that's the Dark Knight Rises problem, is he clearly tries to go bigger over Dark Knight, and it just doesn't pay off well.
Yeah.
And I guess like there's been a running joke online that I've seen where because he likes going bigger in Oppenheimer, he's actually going to nuke a place to film that movie.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was real or not. I saw that. I'm like, I didn't even blink. That was the thing. It was like Christopher Nolan asked studio if you nuke a real place, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's in the budget.
But so the bigger and better thing is definitely a problem. It's something that he's got an issue with for sure. Yeah. Or not necessarily an issue, because there's nothing wrong with bigger necessarily. Sure. But I think it's when it gets a little bit out of control. He doesn't necessarily know how to keep it together. And again, I think Tenet is a great example of that.
But not also like just not being aware of your audience, right? If Inception has a public image of being a too weird of a movie, and then you go and make Interstellar, you alienate more people, and then you're like, Absolutely. You sit there and you're like, well, I should probably just make Tenet then.
Yeah.
Like there's wanting to do your own thing, and then there's being in tune with your audience and your fans.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Oh, it's interesting all the memes Tenet sparked too. Like before it came out, and people kind of had the basic concept, and they're just like, "Oh, it's gonna be a movie you can watch forward and backwards, and like upside down, and it'll be the exact same movie. Like he's gonna go crazy." But like it always sounded positive. Like I don't think it ever came from the side of I'm not gonna see Tenet.
Absolutely,
it always seemed to be like it's gonna be crazy and.
Yeah. And we don't ever really know again, right? That was one of the first movies in the pandemic era that was released.
Correct.
So we don't know if those numbers or what those numbers mean.
Well, and that's the thing, is he gets away with it theoretically because of the pandemic. That any blip in his box office numbers can all just be blamed on COVID versus being blamed on the scope of his film. Yeah. So unfortunately, if that was supposed to be a slap on the wrist a bit of being like, Chris, keep it together, he won't get that. He isn't getting that message. So. I think the next big thing, and again, Tenet is a really, really bad example of this. So I think his biggest weakness as a director is giving in to probably, I'd say, his ego a little bit. And where I find that really manifests is in sound mixing. So Chris has gone on record saying that that he, in particular in Interstellar and Tenet, I believe is where he made these comments. He believes that the sound mix adds to a wonderful feeling of physicality. And then moments later saying a wonderful feeling of scene. Not scene, stale. Wonderful feeling of stale. And so that he believes that eardrum bursting noise over top of his dialogue tracks to a point where things are just muddled and ununderstandable, adds to his films. And he thinks he's on the cutting edge of sound mixing. I personally think he's loony when it comes to that particular
The
opinion.
pretension in those the comments.
Absolutely. And it's sort of like he thinks that this is the start of the talkies, when, we're adding sound in and everyone's saying no. But I'm like, well, no, we're saying no to being able to, like, I want to be able to understand what your characters are saying. I think that's valuable. And the fact that you don't think that, or that you're okay if that's not the case, is mind-blowing to me.
You don't find the wonderful feeling of your popcorn turning around in your stomach like a clothes dryer from the reverb.
So does that affect how you view his films? Like, Sean, you just watched Tenet last night. I assume, based on what we talked,
subtitles.
you watched it with subtitles. Yeah. So, like, I watched it in theaters, couldn't understand a thing. To a point where I'm considering the next time there's a Christopher Nolan movie going in with one of the closed captioning machines, so I can actually understand what people are saying.
Watch that nuke go off in subtitles.
Yeah. Deafening silence intensifies. Yeah. So, like, is that a problem with his filmmaking? Do you guys have is that make you like him less?
I mean, like, my first response is get over yourself, but
For me or for him?
no, for Chris. Like,
Yeah, totally.
yeah, like, but I think it's an interesting perspective still to be like, hey, in real life, if there's a loud sound, it's gonna cover up some of the talking.
Yeah.
So I get where he's coming from in feeling the scene. I just don't think I'll ever find that feeling the scene is more important than understanding the dialogue to carry the story out.
Totally.
So yeah, if I've seen it 10 times and I understand everything perfectly, I'd be A-okay with where he's coming from. But yeah, I think it is a bit alienating to be like, yeah, you'll figure it out without hearing these lines. And hopefully you don't miss a good one.
Yeah, I just feel like he's at the point in his career where any kind of criticisms he's just gonna double down on. Well, that just feels like it. It's just like, oh man, I can't understand Bane. I'm like, and then he's just like, oh fuck you then. I'm not gonna make you understand an entire movie.
Yeah.
Like whether he's like, Inception was too hard to understand. I'm like, here's Tenet.
Yeah.
It just feels like,
or even Interstellar.
Interstellar.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm just gonna call him Double Down from now on.
Yeah.
He feels like a guy who, if you criticize it, it's because you didn't understand it. And then he's going to go out of his way to make it worse. And I fall for it. Absolutely. Like, we talk about Tenet and stuff like that. We watched it together.
Yep.
And I remember walking out of the theater and everybody was like, what the fuck was that? And I'm like, I was just like making excuses for him. I'm like, it's purposely disorienting. I'm like, fuck me. Like, I don't, he doesn't need me defending him. Like, but I just immediately was like, no, it's a Chris Nolan movie.
I remember
it's supposed to be good.
Immediately saying, this is his 2001. And I was like, okay. The level of pretension in this room just went up several notches.
But that's exactly why I said it, right? It was like that. He probably thinks of it that way in terms of here's a movie that they let me make.
Yep.
And I'm going to make the weirdest movie possible. I'm going to make it as long as I want.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it make zero sense.
Sure.
Short of the monkeys, it's
2001.
It's ridiculous
that
movie got made.
Yeah.
And then somebody, not only did somebody read the script and be like, yes, but somebody read the script and like, better give this guy $200 million.
Well, I honestly don't even know if Warner Brothers is reading the scripts anymore. Like, he's been working with them for, I think it was probably even before Batman. But even if it was just Batman, it's been almost 20 years. They will sign off on anything. He prints checks is the thing. So for that company, I get it. Absolutely. But I would be willing to bet they literally didn't see a script for Tenet. That he was like, I'm making another movie. And he said, how much do you need?
I don't know that anybody saw a script for Tenet. That's my issue with it. And like I said, I was apologetic about it. I still think it's a decent movie. I don't know if I feel as strongly about it as I did 2 years ago when we watched it.
Sure.
But it's a Nolan movie and it's weird as shit. And like it was. I think I've always called it as like it's heavy in the best way. Like I want my brain to be melted when I'm in a Nolan film.
Sure.
So I'm one of the few that I want them to get heavier, but that might be the limit. That might be of the upper limits of what I'd be able to do. If he goes any further than that, I think, I don't know what I'm watching. Now I'm on an acid trip.
I think the difference is, though, Interstellar is science-wise sound. Like, there is actual...
Yeah.
That is science-backed. So the concepts that they introduce in that film are accurate. Well, that is not at all the case for Tenet. Unless I am missed an issue of what's a science magazine? Damn it.
Science is a good one.
Oh, is it? Okay. Unless I missed an issue of Science. There we go. Yeah.
Scientific American? Is that the one?
No, I think there literally is one called Science.
Yeah, there's a journal just called Science.
I was thinking
Scientific
Popular
Journal?
Science.
Popular
is the big
Science.
one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nature's a good one.
Nice.
So, does Tenet make him just Michael Bay with heart?
Whoa.
No. I'm not saying I think that, but it's a question.
Okay.
I wish there'd been some loud noises to drown that one out. Maybe he's onto something.
I'll make sure to put that in. There's just a big right over that part, so he's just Parker's mouth moving, but nothing else.
But isn't that effectively what Tenet comes down to? The climax of Tenet is a whole bunch of nonsense that doesn't really make narrative sense.
The only thing I would have, the only good argument I have is that it's a different kind of nonsense. Right? I think with Nolan, at least there's intent. There's intent and purpose for what's happening. Like, it's part of the story.
Yeah, but Michael Bay intends to make the movie he makes.
Yeah, but that big action sequence doesn't ultimately lead to a lot of stuff, is my issue with a lot of his action stuff. It's there because that's where his story beat is. Like, it's been 2.5 minutes, I better have something explode.
Sure. But arguably, isn't that what you were already saying, Sean, about that Tenet feels like him putting together a bunch of cool scenes he wanted. He wanted these set pieces and these concepts. And so he shoves them all together and then draws a line between them.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's a higher level concept that he's dealing with. So in that, I think it still sets him apart from Michael Bay in that aspect.
Sure.
But yeah, I'd say Tenet's pretty close to just... Michael Bay could have directed it, I think.
Okay.
And I think that's the first of Chris Nolan's movies where I could say that. So I don't want to say Chris Nolan as a whole is Michael Bay.
No.
But yeah, no, Tenet, I see where you're coming from, as much as I hated you saying those words initially.
So many people are going to cut and take so much stuff out of context here. I just don't want to weigh in.
As long as it gets people watching, I'll do it. Fair enough. Oh, sorry. Another thing I wanted to ask actually about Michael Bay, or not Michael.
Oh my God.
About Christopher Nolan and about sound is does it change how you want to go and see his movies? Brendan, you already touched on this, that you want brain melting, but you want brain melting from an intellectual point of view.
Yeah.
Are you always going to be going to see his movies in theaters, even if the sound mixing gets worse?
Yeah. Because the visual stuff is too good. And it sounds simple enough, but he and now Villeneuve are the two guys that I absolutely will go to IMAX for.
Sure.
I've kind of stopped going
and
to
then
IMAX.
James Cameron, obviously.
Oh, you just
If only Morbius was in IMAX.
I know, it's just okay. But yeah, I've stopped going to IMAX for most things. Certain things will get me out. Top Gun Maverick will get me out for an IMAX. But Nolan and Villeneuve are the two guys that I have to go see IMAX for. And so I put myself in a bad situation if the sound mixing is bad, because I'm going to get wrecked.
Yep.
But it's not going to deter me. It won't deter me until he makes a bunch of bad movies. Until he turns into Michael Bay.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
Right?
Sean?
I'm so scared of that future.
Yeah, I know, right?
Sorry, actually, just for context, up until Tenet, because of COVID, you had watched all his movies in the theaters, right?
Yes,
the ones that you were aware of.
Anyway. I guess Batman Begins I saw in theaters.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was always a big Chris Nolan in the theaters guy. It's interesting because Tenet, I don't feel like I really missed out with the theater thing. Doing it first at home didn't feel like I wish I'd seen that in theaters.
Yeah.
Whereas Interstellar, for example, was, wow, am I glad I saw that in
totally.
theaters. Seeing the black hole and everything was just insane.
Yeah.
So, yeah, ultimately, I think I'd still see it all in theaters, even if the sound mixing's not ideal.
Yeah.
I don't think it's usually a deal breaker is the thing. If he's ever setting up something vital to the movie and you understanding it, I feel like he doesn't cover that sound too much. You can still hear the dialogue for that. Again, I didn't see Tenet.
I was about to say, you didn't see Tenet in
I don't know what part was covered.
Yeah.
It's about the whole damn thing.
Tenet was really bad for it. Now, granted, though, Tenet is also ununderstandable even when you can hear what they're saying. Like I think it's kind of just nonsense, a lot of what they're making up, and so it's not like it would have been explained.
Yeah.
The red flag for me is the Bane stuff, because the Bane we finally got in theatrical releases were there were still problems, and there was definitely moments where I'm like, I didn't understand what he said, but that was cleaned up. Like, Nolan didn't want that version to be released, so the fact that he was ready to, like, I probably understood, let's say, I would say 70 to 80% of what Bane said the first time I see it in theaters. But he was ready for that to be 50. Because the very first time he released that,
The bumper.
the opening scene
Yeah.
in IMAX theaters.
That's the unedited one, right?
That's the way he wanted Bane to sound, and I probably understood about 10% of what Bane said. Now, granted, it's a busy scene; there's lots going on, and so there would be scenes that would be better than that in the actual finished film. But if I was to get through that movie and understand exactly half of what Bane was saying, that would be tough. Like,
I didn't have a Bane issue
at all.
at all.
Like, not in the preview?
Not even the preview.
Really?
I thought
That's shocking.
Yeah, I didn't have an issue. No, it didn't bother me. So I was weirded out when it started. People started complaining because I didn't struggle with it.
Huh.
Even with the preview.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm right with Parker there. Probably 10% in the preview.
Yeah,
I get it though. Like, the plane's loud and things are happening, and I didn't have an issue with it.
It's weird because also rewatching it, like if you watch a comparison now,
Yeah.
I can understand every word he says because I know the lines and the
Yeah,
context
yeah.
and everything. So yeah, it would be weird if Nolan overlooked that and just kind of went, yeah, I understand it fine. Like, this is okay. But he's also I think he wrote the script for that.
Yeah, he
did.
wrote it and probably
Wrote it.
filmed it. Oh, maybe the once because it was a practical.
that one was only once. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was practical.
Yeah, so
But yeah, I could see where he's coming from. Like, oh yeah, no, I know it. I can hear it fine.
yeah.
But it's like, yeah, I guess I'm glad he listened to the feedback though. Like, no.
Oh yeah, unless do you know if he mixes his sound by himself,
No, it's him and the cinematographer is it's not
Wally Fist.
Pfister. Yeah, thank you. Oh my god, Wally Pfister. So it's the two of them, and then it's Zimmer as well, just because you use Hans Zimmer as the soundtrack for everything. And so typically when they're actually editing, I know there's another editor, but he is in on the final cut, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, he brings in those guys to make sure that the sound levels are right. But I remember him talking about Interstellar in particular, and talking about how Zimmer, basically when they were designing the score for it, there's a whole bunch of things that by default, their programs and stuff filter out. So there's certain levels, the reverb stuff, they filter all these frequencies out. And that's just normal for the human ear. And they just said, screw it. And they reset all those filters. And so that's what makes that reverb and that physicality of the sound.
Yeah.
But that's him and Zimmer trying to be cutting edge in terms of a soundtrack and cutting edge in terms of sound design. When, again, for an average viewer, or even more than that, I'd say for most viewers, 99% of people, it's annoying more than anything, I think. And so it is a decision made by multiple people.
Yeah. It feels like a social experiment, though, to be honest with you, because, like, again, watching Interstellar last night, where in big moments that reverb kicks in, and there are moments when I don't like it, and then there's moments that make me do this, like lean up.
Yeah.
And lean in closer. I'm like, oh crap. So I get it, but it does feel like throwing it at the wall and seeing what parts of it stick.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's purposeful or not.
Yeah, I get the impression that he doubles down, like you said.
Yeah.
So I think he's more drinking his own Kool-Aid a little bit, and that I don't know if he's going to back down from it now that he's done it.
Yeah. Is the sound like your biggest gripe then?
With him as general, no. I have some issues with how he writes, maybe not films, but writes women. Given that basically every one of his movies, I think literally all of them, are he's involved in the script and the story. with the exception of maybe Insomnia, which I know was adapted from a book. So I think there was a little bit more of the author in there. Anyway, I don't think he knows what to do with women. And I basically can divide up most of his films into three categories as having no women at all, which is Following and Dunkirk. Women are dead / inspiration for the main character, which is Memento, Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and Inception. And few to no women, where they basically don't matter at all, but they do technically exist in the movie, which is Insomnia, Prestige, Dark Knight Rises, and Tenet. I even looked up, I went on my way to look up which movies of his passed the Bechdel test, which for those that don't know is the based on a original comic. Anyway, in order to pass, you have to have two named female characters that have a conversation with each other in the film that involves something other than men. And every one of them fail, with the exception of 4, and the 4 that pass are ridiculous. So he's got Dark Knight. Ramirez, who is one of Gordon's cops, talks to...
barely named.
Yeah, but she is technically named.
Yeah.
She talks to Martha Gordon on the phone and says that Jim's not coming home. But she's at gunpoint. The Joker is holding her at gunpoint. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, a man is telling her what words
But they're
to
still
say.
talking about a man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, no. So I don't know if actually she talks about... She says, take the kids. Right? So it's mainly... But you're right. It passes, but by the slimmest of margins, and I think it's more of a technicality than not.
Sure.
Yeah, the context is all about Jim.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like technically he's not mentioned.
In Inception, Mal and Ariadne discuss love. And Mal lectures Ariadne about you don't understand. Now, again, it's a weird technicality because Mal isn't real. And she is a manifestation of Cobb's memory of her. So if really, Ariadne is talking to Cobb. So probably shouldn't pass. Interstellar, we get Murph and Brandt have a discussion in the NASA headquarters. And they actually talk about NASA as a thing. So that's like the one where I'm like, okay, you guys, you pulled it off.
Nice.
And then Dark Knight Rises, Selena and her sidekick, who... Do you guys remember her having a sidekick?
Yeah, I do, but she's
do you
not
know
named.
her? She is named. Yeah.
Is
Clearly.
Is it the comic?
I don't know. Is it?
What is it?
What is the comic? Yeah. It's Selena and Holly.
Yeah, that's it.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
I
forgot it, so.
And they
I forgot there's a sidekick. So
I know.
you're
Yeah,
one
she has the
step ahead of
apartment
me.
right after the first heist.
I believe it's played by Juno Temple. Is who it is.
Ring a bell.
But they speak briefly, and they talk, and basically Selena tells her to get out of his life. And so the fact that that's where we're at with female characters, and especially when he has killer female characters. You know, Anne Hathaway has been in multiple of his movies. We got Jessica Chastain in there. Like he has Hilary Swank in Insomnia. Yeah. And I literally forgot she was in the movie. She's actually one of the leads.
She's the other cop.
That's what I mean. And she's just not memorable to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's specifically that he doesn't know how to write women, because I don't think it's that problem. It doesn't come across that they're just sex objects. But, you know, we literally have Dunkirk, which is a movie featuring only men. 2 women are technically in the movie, and they are nurses, and they say nothing, and they are not named. Granted, no one is really named in that movie, but it is astounding to me that can even happen in a modern setting. And again, I choose to lay the blame at his feet in terms of his writing, but maybe he just really likes movies about dudes.
There's something to be said about, like, I know in a current social climate, people want women being written by women and those things, and maybe it's just he's just a dude that knows his strengths and weaknesses. If he's like, I don't deal with a lot of women, so I don't know how to write women.
I think it's such a cop-out.
Sure, right? But
you know, like I don't mind when men write women personally. In some cases, like I think that if you've got a movie that's 80% female, yeah, you should probably have a woman on the writers in the writers' room at least. You know, But 50% of humanity, and he's just like, that's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't realize like that. Pretty much none of his movies passed the test.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think it surprises me too because he works so closely with his wife, like who produces literally everything he puts out.
Yep.
But doesn't write anything.
No.
Isn't a writer. Correct.
No, but just
Yeah.
would have a decent amount of say in
Sure.
Yeah.
how the movie kind of pans out. It just kind of seems shocking and tone deaf to like really still not
Try.
do it or not be able to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it is just he can't. I don't.
Who's the female in Tenet, guys? Is there one?
Yeah. The actress.
Yeah.
I keep thinking it's Elizabeth Debicki, but I'm actually not even sure.
Yeah.
Debicki? What's her name?
I don't know, but
Something close to
she
that.
also doesn't amount to much. Right?
Doesn't pass mustard.
Yeah, we have the one scientist at the beginning to set up. Hey, time goes
Right.
backwards for these inverted things.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So
But that's it.
So Interstellar is probably like the best example of his best versions of female leads.
Absolutely. And by far. Like, a lot.
Yeah.
Because Anne Hathaway is, or Anne Hathaway and Jessica Chastain, I would say, share pretty near to equal billing with McConaughey. I don't actually know if it's literally equal billing, but in terms of screen time and in terms of character significance, they are right up there. Arguably, like there's literally a joke made at the end of the movie that Cooper flies back to Murphy Station, or is it
Cooper Station.
Oh, sorry. Cooper's his last name. Yeah. Damn it. Cooper flies back to Cooper Station and then finds out, and he's like, wow, you named a space station after me? And they're like, no. And so it's, like there's a moment there where you're like, oh, maybe you recognize the fact that you rely too much on men. Like those jokes seem that he's a little bit more feminist facing. Now, granted, this isn't a Christopher Nolan problem. This is a Hollywood problem.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I don't want to blame him here. There's lots of movies that don't pass the Bechdel test. And that's not exactly the perfect test of feminism in film either. But it is a pretty low bar.
Bare minimum.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It really bothers me. And the fact that we keep going back to the dead wife thing, and that's the motivation, is unfortunate. And it's the chasing their ghosts thing, like you've mentioned a couple times, is the feeling of, oh, God, like women only exist. Arguably, Inception, like you mentioned, is his best film.
Yeah.
Maul is only there to motivate him, and it's his demon. It's literally, man. And I have a big problem with it.
Apparently. Well, but to be fair, it's bringing it to light is a big thing because I don't know. I don't know if we notice it if you don't really tear it apart the way you do. Like I said, those 4 instances are barely instances.
Yeah.
In a catalog of movies, especially because those movies aren't short movies.
Yeah.
You're given 3 hours to pass this test, and you don't. And then when you do, it's by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah.
So that's problematic. I don't have a good I don't want to make it sound like that was an excuse that I gave him. Like he's not good at writing women and all that stuff. I don't want to make that excuse for him. If he wanted to do it, he could probably do it, and he could try, or he can learn, or he could bring somebody on.
Yeah.
Or he can bring somebody on. But at the end of the day, like in my mind, I'm like, am I cool with him not knowing how to write women and not bothering to try, or would I rather him try and do a shit job of it?
I think I'd like him to try once. I think
give it a whirl.
Yeah, like you gave us Tenet.
Yeah.
Like we know you can put out garbage. So,
man, this is a Tenet just slammed. You guys getting dunked on this episode.
It's just for the record, I truly do love the movies this guy puts out, and I did enjoy Tenet more than this episode would seem. But it is very noticeably the worst of the pack, and by a lot.
Oh yeah. It's his worst movie.
Well, I think what's really bugging me the more I think about this, now that you've said it too, is just all of his movies are a big team of people. Like take Inception, there is no reason that had to be pretty much all guys. Like it would be so easy for Arthur to be played not by Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yep.
And it wouldn't really make a difference at all. I loved him in it, I'm sure I'd love plenty of women in that same role, and it's
Totally.
very doable. They
Yeah.
could have the same slickness and I guess accomplish the same things he did
Yeah.
in that movie. And yeah, I guess Interstellar's pretty similar. Like, yeah, any member of the crew could have been female as well.
Yeah.
Now,
So it's like-
in Interstellar, there's only 4 on the crew, right?
6
it
if you
4?
count the 2 robots.
But 4 people.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And so, like, I give him a little bit of credit with Interstellar just because, you know, like, sure, it could have been 50-50, but I don't need him to do exactly 50-50 either.
And from
you
everything
know,
you're telling
like-
me, he was gonna he'd put in a second female, and it would have been the one to die.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. Well, and an even more present news, the main female in Inception has now transitioned. So, like, man, he managed to even pick someone that clearly wasn't a female inside either. But shout out to you, Elliot. You know, here for you. That's my whole rant on women. So if anyone wants to,
there's what do we have in Oppenheimer? It's going to be the same problem, right? According to the cast list, it's the same issue.
90% men. Yeah. Now, again, to give him a little bit of credit, my understanding about what that movie is going to be, like, it's effectively a biopic. I don't know if it actually is truthful enough to be a biopic, but you know, they have to take from that guy's actual life, and he was surrounded by guys a lot. You know, like, what he's known for was science stuff, and women basically weren't allowed to do that at the time. So there is, at least in that case, a little bit more of a reason why it is male heavy. And the same with Dunkirk, is that it's about soldiers. Could he have stood to spend a little bit more time in the medical tent so we have a feminine presence for longer than 10 seconds? Yes, he absolutely could have. But I get why, you know, the cast probably should be 90% men if you're talking about a war film. Yeah.
But now are we thinking he's picking these projects specifically? Like,
It's a little sus.
yeah, it's tough, right? Like, you don't see it, you bring it up, and now that's all I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And there's less and less to defend.
Totally.
Like, I don't know if I'm as hurt as Sean is right now.
A little rattled. Well, I was
You're a
watching
little-
Memento, and I was like, oh, Carrie-Anne Moss is so good. And then you're like, oh, no strong female characters. And it's like, yeah, she never talks to another woman in that movie, and she's kind of just a horrible person.
Yeah.
But I guess it's hard to talk to another woman. You're the only woman in it.
Well, and how isolating is that got to be on like a lot of his films, especially because he tends to stick with the same cast. You know, like, he always brings Michael Caine back. Tom Hardy's been in multiple films. Joseph Gordon-Levitt has been in at least 2, playing different characters. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not going to list Christian Bale because he's been Batman in 3 films. You know, I mean, different characters.
Sure.
Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Oh, sorry, just Christian Bale was in The Prestige as well. I can't.
Oh, yeah.
I'd call him returning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's great.
So how hard is that to then show up and be whoever this lady is in Tenet? I think it's Elizabeth Debicki or Deb. But I'm also thinking about that adorable kid from Jerry Maguire. So
That's Jared Lipnicki.
yeah, see? I think I'm mixing them a bit. Anyway, how hard
Jared
is it to walk onto a set like this and you've got the boys club of guys that have worked together for 10 years?
Yeah.
You know, like, you got Tom Hardy, like, not on Tenet, but, like, broing around with Chris. As far as I understand, they're good buddies.
Yeah.
And, man, you were the only woman walking around there other than Chris's wife.
And you bring up a good point, but there's a reason. There must be a reason why somebody like Anne Hathaway comes back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for someone like Anne, she's probably got to this point in her career realizing the fact that Hollywood is a boys' club.
So is it?
You know.
So like you said earlier, it's not just a Christopher Nolan problem.
It's definitely not. Absolutely not. And I would argue he's not even the worst at it. But I think the fact is people do laud him with praise, which he deserves. But the few things he does poorly need to be highlighted, and it's worthwhile to talk about these things.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think people really are.
Well, no, apparently.
Yeah.
I was like,
So to pivot it slightly, I just touched on it a little bit. Do you guys think that him bringing back the same people causes an element of lack of originality between his films, or sameness? You know, is he going to fall in some of the Tim Burton problem of, you know, oh, every movie's got to have Johnny Depp and a Helena Bonham Carter? You know, like, does it eventually feel rote?
I think he skirts the issue just because the main character is typically someone fresh, to an extent. Like Matthew McConaughey,
Sure.
we've got Leo.
Yeah.
He's got so many unique main characters that I honestly kind of sit there being like, oh, when's Michael Caine gonna show up?
Yeah.
Where's Cillian Murphy? Like, I don't mind it at all, and I think it avoids the Tim Burton situation because he brings in so many different people as well. Like, it's almost cameos at this point.
Yeah, fair enough.
Having a big name cameo is kind of fun typically.
Yeah. The Michael Caine is the only issue I have.
Oh, you have an issue with him popping
Just
up?
like, I love Michael Caine and I think he's great in all the movies, but other than Alfred, he's just the same guy. In the middle of the movie, he's just gonna pop up, give the main character the thing he's supposed to do, and then peace out. And I don't like name wise. He's just Michael Caine in Tenet, or he's just Michael Caine in The Prestige, or he's just Michael Caine in Inception.
Well, okay, hold on. I think he is got a bigger role in The Prestige, though.
Yeah.
You know, like,
sure,
I
I just think he's the one that I think of that starts to blend as one thing. When I see him, I'm like, he's the one that sometimes takes me out of it because he just feels like Michael Caine.
Fair enough.
Because he's the one that comes back the most often for the same spot in his movies.
Yeah, and I guess Cillian is always someone different.
Yeah.
You know, Scarecrow is very noticeably a different character than... Oh, God. I can't think of any of his other characters.
Yeah, like Tom Hardy in Inception is not Bane, is like what we're saying, right? I'm still gonna keep the camera on you though. I'm just gonna keep talking.
Wow, this is brutal.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah. And actually, the cool thing with Cillian Murphy too is
We're right back to it.
No. I actually had another point in here. Is I actually think he shifts nicely even between those films, because he's, I think, the only one other than, you know, obviously Batman and Alfred that are in all three movies. I think.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But other than those three, he's the only one in all three films, and he shifts nicely to a point where it doesn't even feel ridiculous. I find there's a place for him in each of them, and I think he's always doing something a little bit different. You know, the first film he's actually a villain, and you know is a main threat. Second film he's sort of like kind of acting in the background, right? Like, isn't he selling drugs or something?
No, he gets caught in the car at the beginning.
Yeah, but what is he doing in that car? Oh no, it's weapons, isn't it? He's selling something.
Yeah.
It might even just be the fear toxin, but like he's gone from, you know, scourge of Gotham to like, you know, parkade van deals
being
with
zap strapped in the back of a budget van.
Yeah, and then in the third one he shows up as a judge for all of Gotham's wicked, and that's great. Like, oh man. Yeah, so I asked the question, but I fully love the fact that he keeps pulling these people back personally.
Yeah.
And then what about in this sort of same vein, lack of variety in terms of his concepts? You know, like a lot of his movies come down to, again, we have the dead wife, we have manipulation of time or manipulation of space, but typically it's time. You guys obsessed with time. Does that end up feeling, again, rote? Does it feel like more of the same, or do you think he does enough differently?
I think Tenet was sort of got a dunk on it again.
Yeah.
But I think it was the first one where I really felt like, okay, he just wanted to keep messing with time. Because I think a lot of his projects lately have been different enough. Like, I know Dunkirk was time focused again, but I loved how the timelines worked. And it felt fresh for him still. I thought it wasn't quite the same as, I guess, what he'd done before at that point.
And the time isn't front and center with that. Like it definitely is, and there's cool timeline stuff, but it's like it's not literally the point, the plot, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But I thought that's what set it aside too. Like,
sure,
there's tons of war films out there, and this one felt really fresh because of it.
Totally.
But it wasn't in your face. Hey, time! This is a Chris Nolan movie.
yeah.
So I really liked that there, and I think ultimately, like, I'm stoked for Oppenheimer too, because, and I think I'm stoked because it's not such a. I guess it could be a time-focused thing. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
But it feels like a biopic will be very different to what he's done before.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for it because I know it'll be something new, I think.
Yeah.
Like when he took on the Batman movies.
Totally.
He really revolutionized superhero movies.
He absolutely did, yeah.
In such a way. So I think that's the thing for me, is I always trust him to bring something fresh. Maybe I didn't like it as much. Like, again, Tenet was like a... Well, it just felt like more of an action movie,
sure.
but it was a fresh take still.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the least fresh compared to Interstellar or Inception or The Prestige.
Yeah, I do wish we could get away from the tortured soul main character.
Tortured man in particular.
Tortured man in particular. I like, and that's even Batman, right? Like, it just that hasn't changed. That's 3 movies of a dude struggling over his mental trauma. And and
arguably the mental trauma is about his maybe wife Rachel in 2/3 of that trilogy.
Yeah.
So
I do wish there was we could get away from that a little bit. I need, like, maybe and that's just comes down to maybe there's a different type of motivation. So I'm excited for Oppenheimer because, again, it's a biopic, and unless there's a dead wife there and we don't know about.
Yeah, I have not looked up the guy.
I'm not up on my opes, but like, I don't know if he's got a dead wife that made him make a nuclear bomb. So I don't. Like,
it's just a tale of revenge.
This is a Chris Nolan's Oppenheimer.
Just killing Nazis.
That's the one trope I wish he would stray from. I know, or I'd like to see a different take on.
Huh. Fair enough. So I'm gonna.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Poor Tenet. I can feel it.
No, it's not even about Tenet actually. So you may not have known this, either of you, but Christopher Nolan was one of 2 people responsible for Man of Steel's story.
Yeah.
So it's him and David S. Goyer, and then Goyer is the one that does the screenplay.
Sure.
Does that concern you at all? The fact that, like, that's what we end up getting, and in terms of his overall ability, given the fact that Man of Steel is generally frowned upon as a film.
Oh, it feels like it's mostly positive. I get shit for it a lot for hating it as much as I do. So I've never felt like it's frowned upon. I thought I was the outlier.
Fair enough. Sean?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess I don't know a ton about it. Like, to me, it just felt like, ooh, we liked what he did with Batman. We need to do that to Superman. Who can write a dark superhero story? Get Chris Nolan on the horn and let's sort it out.
Do we know how much he actually contributed?
I don't.
Because it just feels like Goyer's taking a lot of credit for that.
In fairness, though, like, he's worked with Goyer before. Sure. I don't think he would just chuck Goyer under the bus.
Yeah, because they did Begins together, right? Batman Begins.
Correct. Yeah. I think Goyer was involved in all 3 of the Dark Knight films, actually, in some capacity as a writer. Yeah. So I feel like they've collaborated before. If Chris felt like he did a whole bunch of it, but Goyer went out and said, took more credit for it, I don't think Chris would throw him under the bus either and be like, no, I did all of it. Like, it's probably one of those things we're never going to know specifically.
Yeah, I think I chalk it up to more of a comic book thing than a Christopher Nolan thing. I think this is just another really good example of Batman being not more relatable, but a character that's easier to grasp and to make make relatable. And I think this is just another instance of people not understanding the character of Superman, which is like a forever problem.
Sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, to me, it just feels like I feel like if he's not writing and making his own movie, like something like Inception, that's just his baby, like from start to finish, he's going to be producing, directing, he's at the writing table, like he's there
Yeah.
for every bit of it. That's going to get all his love. Whereas something like, hey, can you help us write Man of Steel? We'll give you, I don't know the number, but $30 million to help write this.
Sure.
You're not going to say no, but I can't imagine quite pouring your heart and soul into it the same you would with a movie that you are really seeing from start to finish, and
That's
it is
fair.
your project. Which
Yeah.
is not saying he doesn't have integrity and he just kind of wrote it off and like, hey, there we go.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I just think it would be harder for anyone if it's not kind of your passion project
Sure.
to really nail it.
And that's a great point. Like, you know, we talked about Del Toro, and he is someone that's very similar. That if he's not involved in every aspect of it, he'll definitely contribute. But the stuff that he's involved as producer or just as a writer, I find isn't as good as his stuff where it's his baby the whole time. So yeah, it's a great point. That's basically all I had.
You gonna take another moment to bag on Tenet just one more time?
No, actually, I figured I'd kind of end it off just by saying that this guy's he makes amazing films. And
You would know it listening to this episode.
No, I think you would though.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
truly though, I think top 5 maybe of modern filmmakers. I don't want to put a list together, and I'm not going to. So
I'm gonna make you one day though.
so I can just keep saying top 5 about any of the people I talk about, and then it's never get called out. But yeah, I think he's easily up there. And the variety of films he has made, the fact that we're getting a biopic, the fact that he made a war film, he's made comic book, like he's clearly got range. Maybe not necessarily range in terms of the specific story, but
The fact that you said he made comic book films, and in my head I was like, what movies were those?
yeah.
Is tells you everything you know about Chris Nolan.
Well, and I think Sean said it best, is that he revolutionized comic book movies. Basically, if you don't have an MCU, we don't get Iron Man unless we have Dark Knight.
Yeah.
I guess Batman Begins. Because they come out, Dark Knight comes out the same year as Iron Man. But,
Yeah, I was reading a bit about this though, and like The Dark Knight, I believe is the first comic book movie to gross over $1 billion.
Yeah.
With The Dark Knight
yeah, it wouldn't
Rises
surprise
being
me.
the second. And now it's just commonplace. Like I think at least 10 Marvel movies have grossed more than $1 billion.
Yeah,
at
it's
this point.
the
Yeah.
standard bearer for their top tier ones.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's crazy how much he did actually kind of contribute on that side, even if it's not. Yeah, I guess like you said, it's like you don't really associate him as a comic book movie
No.
director, despite doing 3.
Yeah.
So-
I also think it's important to I like these discussions because there's obviously 3 of us who absolutely love this dude. Johnny's your favorite director, but none of these guys are bulletproof and they're not
yeah.
infallible, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think it's really important to have those discussions to be like, it's okay that they're not perfect.
Yeah,
Because I know people get up in arms about that stuff and get overprotective and
sure.
it gets overly personal. But it's good. They're only going to get better if you shit on them.
Yeah.
At least, I mean, not in this case. Double Down's got a different
Yeah.
mindset.
It's
So
dangerous.
Yeah, we're gonna make this dude make some real weird movies. So,
Last question to finish us off. Sean, what would Chris Nolan have to do filmmaking wise? Like not as a personal bad person, but what would he have to do to make you stop watching his movies?
oh,
Ooh, like it would take a few bad ones in a row, for
Yeah.
sure. Obviously, I want to see him progress based on what we discussed today. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've got not a good relationship with him personally.
Yeah.
But I think it's been interesting because he is kind of one of the greats, it feels like.
Sure.
And I think he's the first one I got to watch become established. Like
Mm-hmm.
Tarantino, Scorsese, like they're all people that I picked up on, love their movies, recognize their names, but they were well established before I ever started watching movies.
Yeah.
Whereas this was kind of his 4th movie, Batman Begins. Like from there on out,
Yeah.
I saw every one of his movies in theaters. So I guess it feels kind of like I'm finally seeing someone really grow and build. So
Yeah.
it'd take quite a bit for me to be like, gah, I can't watch another one.
Totally.
But I think as long as he's making things feel fresh, which I think is one of his biggest strengths, that whatever he does feels fresh in some way. There's something new that excites me about all of his projects.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be the big thing if he stops and it just becomes kind of cookie cutter or too Michael Bay kind of
Yeah.
that sort of thing. That could definitely dissuade me, but it would take a few. Like Tenet hasn't made me remotely say, I can't, or I don't want to watch Oppenheimer. Like,
Yeah, I
I'm
completely
stoked
agree.
to see that, and
Yeah,
I think it'll be a
the
fresh
goodwill
take.
bank is real full.
Yeah, totally.
real full.
Well, and so you mentioned, sorry, just to pick at this a little bit, but you mentioned you obviously want to see him improve based on some of the things we talked about. So if we focus on just the women's side of things, if that doesn't improve at all, is that going to be a deal breaker? And I don't want to put you on the spot and make you seem like a bad person, because let me be really clear, that would not be a deal breaker for me. I will, like, if his way of writing women never improves, I'm still going to see his movies.
Yeah, but would you be more? You'd be more aware of it though.
Absolutely, and
I mean,
I've
you already are
been
aware
aware
of it.
like for a
This
few
is gonna be
years.
tough for you now.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's something I deeply want, but that's,
Sure.
I think that's all of Hollywood, and I don't think, I mean, I look more at the reviews to say I have to watch this movie than I look at does it pass the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
So ultimately, probably not.
Sure.
Like, that wouldn't have an impact, but it's not to say it wouldn't disappoint me.
Yeah.
It would disappoint me, but I'd be like, well, it's still, I can't wait to see the story he's made and the world he's built here.
Totally.
All that. So yeah, not a deal breaker, but it would be disappointing.
Yeah, fair
I
enough.
stand.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show again, Sean.
Oh, my pleasure. Wait, this is my first one.
No, I mean, thanks. I'm thanking you again.
Oh, good. Cool.
The thank is the thank
Just
you
had
is
to double
coming
check.
again. Yeah.
That was a Nolan time thing.
Yeah.
A
That's brutal.
temporal pincer.